Hi, welcome to Training Mugs Java coding series. In our session, we just tried understanding what is arrays in Java and then why do we need arrays in Java. So we'll just continue with working with arrays. So in this session, we'll just try to understand how do you work with an array. So working with array involves in 4 steps in Java. So first is declaration, second is instantiation, third is initializing array elements, and fourth is manipulating or accessing elements. So even though you feel like it involves in 4 different steps, we can all combine these 4 steps into a single step that we'll see later. But in general, working with arrays involves in these 4 steps. So let us try to understand like how do you declare an array. So if you look at the syntax, so since array contains homogeneous elements or a specific type of elements, so you have to first define what type of data you want to store in an array, followed by array declaration. The square brackets declares that you're going to declare an array followed by a variable name. So since arrays are objects in Java, so these objects to access we need a variable name. So that's why in the syntax we need to mention what are the type of variables you want to store, and to access that object we need a reference variable. So let us look at some of the examples. Examples, we want to store employee IDs which are of type integer. So you have to create int since you want to store all integer elements. So int followed by the square brackets employee IDs, and similarly marks of student which holds an array of bytes, and price of share which holds array of floats, and income of the week which stores an array of double, and status of the product which stores an array of boolean, and vowels which stores an array of character. So these are basically the primitives. So you can create all arrays of primitives like shorts, long. So these are the 8 primitives, array of primitives you can create. So a very important point here is most of the freshers, whenever they declare the variables, so they use alphabets like I, J, K, X. So do not declare like that, because according to the coding standards, the variable names must be very descriptive. So since we are creating IDs of employees, so you can simply create employee IDs, marks of student, price of share, and you also need to follow the camel case coding standard whenever you create a variable. This is what one of the very important whenever you write code. So habituate this from very beginning of writing the code. And then another very important point here is, so when you're creating the above declaration, it's just declaration of an array. So array is not yet created, right? So Java differs with other programming languages in syntax. So here just array is declared, not yet instantiated. So a very important point here. So only a reference variable is created, not the actual array object. So let us try understanding how do you basically instantiate an array. So how do you create an object of an array? If we look at the syntax, so we know that arrays are objects in Java. So they will be created by using a new keyword followed by the type of elements that what you want to store, along with the fixed size of elements you want to store in that array. So example, so employee IDs, which we have already declared in our previous step, I want to store 10 employee IDs. So you have to create an object of an array using new followed by int, because it is going to store that int type along with the size 10. So now at this time there is an array will be created with the 10 elements. Each one of this holds an employee ID, nothing but an integer value which occupies 4 bytes of memory. Similarly, marks of student, which is an array of byte. So we want to create 6 subjects, 6 marks of student. So we'll create a new byte of 6. So now here an array of 6 byte elements will be created. So similarly, price of share is equal to new float of 5. So here a 5 elements array will be created which holds, each element will be a float which occupies 4 bytes of memory. So similarly, income of the week, new double 7. So an array of 7 double elements will be created. Each one will occupy 8 bytes of memory. Similarly, status of the product is new boolean. So we know that individually boolean is represented with a single bit 0 or 1. So here an array of 3 booleans will be created on the heap. And similarly, vowels is equal to new char of 5. Here an array of 5 characters will be stored on the memory. Still we did not assign any values in this, just we instantiated an array. So let us understand what are the default values. So since array is an object in Java, we know that all are stored on heap. So since array is stored on heap, all the values inside an array will be by default initialized with your JVM with the default values. As we know, the default values will be based on the type. Example, suppose if you store or if it belongs to an integer family like byte, short, int, long, by default the values are initialized with 0. And similarly, if it is a real family like float or double, then the default values are going to be 0.0. And if it is a character, then by default space will be initialized, and boolean, if it is boolean, then false will be the default value, and if it is object, then the default value is going to be null. So let us try understanding. So whenever you create byte marks of student is equal to new byte of 6, let us understand how it will be stored in the memory. So marks of student is a reference variable. So depending upon the location where you create this, let us assume that marks of student will be stored on stack. So if you think this as a stack, marks of student will be stored inside a stack. And if you think this as an heap, and an array of 6 elements will be created on heap, each one of that is a byte element, so that the default value is going to be initialized with 0, wherein marks of student will be pointing to this particular array. So each one of these elements can be accessed by the reference of marks of student. With the previous topic learning, try to answer these simple quizzes. So the first question, identify the correct array declaration, and here are the options. Pause this for a minute and answer your question in the comment section below. Question number 2, identify the current syntax for declaring an array of double variable, and here are the options. And question number 3, which of the following statement is true based on the below declaration? Given integer array employee IDs, and here are the options. So fourth question, identify the current syntax for instantiating an array. Given double integer array salaries of employees, and here are the options. Pause it for a minute and answer this question in the comment section below. Question number 5, which of the following statement is true about array in Java? Here are the options.